What's up, you guys? Chet-Guthrie, the Dream Poet here, coming to you all with a very brief statement before the start of this video. And anyway, you guys, as of September 1st, my book, Ghosts and Mysteries of Bradley County, Tennessee, has hit Amazon shelves, or Kindle shelves. I'm not sure exactly what. Anyway, long story short, Kindle, Amazon, Kindle, they're all owned by the same people. Anyway, you guys, I'm super excited. This is my very first self-published book. And anyway, I thought, I would just share it with you guys. You can find the link to this book in the description box below. If you've ever wanted to find a way to support the channel or support my adventures to keep this boat afloat, well, this is a perfect idea. You can give it as a gift to a friend, a family member, or just a book to share around the campfire for this fall season. Because as you all know, haunt season is upon us. It's my favorite time of year, my favorite filming time of year, and you know what? This book is awesome as well. But anyway, guys, I'm going to let the cameras roll. This was a fun vlog to make. It's a really good one, so let those cameras roll now. It's really quiet out here. Like eerily quiet. Maybe it sets the tone for the topic we're about to talk about today. What's up, you guys? Chet-Guthrie, the Dream Poet here, coming to you all with the first real episode of haunt season. Yes, it's my favorite time of year. I go around the southeast, I tell ghost stories, I tell the history, the lore, the evidence based around it, all that fun stuff. And today, you guys, it leads me out here into practically the middle of nowhere. Well, it's not really the middle of nowhere, just a lot of back roads to get here. Anyway, we're in Blue Ridge, Georgia, but we're near Tilley Bend. And here at Tilley Bend, or at least as what I say by the river that's right behind us, there is a very fascinating ghost story and legend associated with this area. Mostly with this cemetery right here. You see, out here right beside the Tilley Baptist Church. By the way, this church was established in 1858. It looks really good for its age. But the ghost story we are focusing on today happened in this cemetery. The Tilley Church Cemetery, established in the early 1800s. And the focal point is this tree in the middle right here. Now, in order to set this story up, we must go all the way back to the 1700s. A time when this whole area was inhabited by the Creek Nation. And around that time, while the Creek Nation called this area home, there was a group of South Carolinian colonists that had come in through here. They had broken off from South Carolina, and they had come up here. And now the Creek and these South Carolinian colonists, they got along really well. In fact, it was so good that you had these men, these male colonists from South Carolina, they were marrying into the Creek. They were marrying Creek chief and Creek men's daughters. And all was going really well. All for about 100 years until the Cherokee encroached on this area. Or maybe not so much encroached, but they did come into the area. And for some reason, the Cherokee and the Creek just never got along. Which I find that very interesting, because if you've ever met somebody from the Cherokee Nation, you will know that they are some of the nicest people you will ever meet. And that also goes for the Creek people as well, the Creek Nation. And well, it even goes as far back as to the 1700s as well. You see, the Creek were a farming people, and I think that's how they and these South Carolinian colonists got along so well. But the Cherokee, they were also very friendly, very kind. They were not warmongering people. In fact, they would set aside their differences and they would assimilate. Some examples of this was, well, prior to the Trail of Tears, when the Cherokee, were assimilating into American culture. Chief Major Ridge, he felt the only way that the Cherokee Nation could survive is if they assimilated into American culture. But I don't want to get too far away from the story. Long story short, the Cherokee pushed the Creek out of this area, and well, you still had families that stayed behind. Mostly they were the daughters who had married into these colonists or these colonist families that stayed behind. And well, that leads up to the story that we are about to tell, and the woman who is the focal point behind this story. And that woman's name was Elizabeth Tilley Bradley. And she had married a man by the name of Jason Bradley. Now originally Elizabeth, she was born in 1846 in North Carolina. But her family, all of her family was from this area. So they ended up coming back. They ended up coming back here, and that's where Elizabeth grew up. She started a family. She had a daughter and a daughter-in-law. One, of course, married into the family. She became a Tilley. And the other one, well, she had married into the Stanley family. And around here at this time, there was a big fighting family feud between the Stanleys and the Tilleys. Now, as all family feuds tend to go, some of them fizzle out, and others, the hatred and the bitterness only continue to escalate. Well, it was around this time in the mid-1800s that there was a shooting that had taken place at this church right here. Some of the victims that had gotten shot was Elizabeth Tilley's, was her daughter-in-law, and also the Tilley pastor. He was another person that lost his life. And there were a few other parishioners who had died in this shooting. But this was the first nail in the coffin for what would happen with Elizabeth Tilley Bradley and this curse that is said to have happened. You see, the Tilley family were very upset by this shooting, this loss of life, especially near a holy site, that they said enough was enough. So, and they went to Stanley Gap, which is where the Stanley family lived. And in the middle of the night, while the men were sleeping, they went and they killed them. And sadly, as a result of this, Elizabeth Tilley's daughter, who had married into the Stanley family, she was pregnant. She went into early labor, and she would later die from her complications due to the birth, and she would also lose her child as well. So Elizabeth, losing not only her daughter but her daughter-in-law to this very, very trivial family debacle that resulted at the end of this loss of life. Well, Elizabeth Tilley, she showed her darker side. You see, going back to what I was talking about with the Creek and the Cherokee and the South Carolinian colonists, well, Elizabeth, she practiced in Creek magic. Or, well, she was a witch doctor. Now, witch doctors in Appalachia, they are not evil witches. In fact, it is the exact opposite. They do their best to help people. They use medicinal remedies. They work a lot like granny witches or medicine men and women of this area. But with a witch doctor, they also protect people from bad magic, or as some Native American cultures call it, bad medicine. And well, right after Elizabeth had cast this curse, something very strange was going on in the community. Now, there was only about 10 families at most in this area, but as I was saying, something was happening. Children, which were only about 1 year old, as well as newborns were dying at birth left and right. You had 1-year-olds that were dying under mysterious circumstances. They were all dying in all weird manners alike. And well, that's when people started realizing what Elizabeth had done in her cursing. The newborns and the children were dying, almost as if in a way that, you know, she lost her daughter and her daughter-in-law and her granddaughter to some feud that people probably could have put aside their differences and kept on going. It had turned into something very, very, very heartbreaking and scary. Well, the Tilley family, they eventually said enough is enough. So they came out here, and as the story goes, they hung Elizabeth from this tree. Now the story goes, before they hung her, they gave her any last words. And essentially what she said is she would come back from the grave and haunt them. Well, after she had passed, they dropped her body and they buried her right beneath the tree. And since she was a witch doctor, a medicine woman, they buried her facing west. And where this rock is now, that is where she is buried. There was a headstone of both her and her husband. Both have since been removed. I think they did it because they didn't want people to deface headstones. But anyway, the headstone faces west, while you can see everybody else in the cemetery, they face east. Like Lewis Hickey, January 31st, 1907 to 1973, and Dolly Hickey, 1882 to 1920. Now you think this is where the story would end. Well, it didn't. Babies were still dying left and right, and so were young children. And about a year to the day, Elizabeth's daughter-in-law, or I should say sister-in-law, was hung from this tree because it was alleged that Elizabeth's spirit was acting through her. Essentially, she was possessed. And well, anyway, they hung May Tilley Bradley from this tree, and she is buried here at the cemetery as well. But strangely enough, after all this took place, the death stopped. And somewhere in this cemetery, Elizabeth Tilley Bradley's mother is buried here. Her headstone is still standing around here, as well as Mary Tilley Bradley, the woman who was allegedly possessed by Elizabeth's spirit. That one, I don't know too much about, but I found her grave. And ironically, she is buried not too far from the tree. And I guess this is where the story, where fact meets with legend or myth. The dates don't exactly add up. For example, February 28th, 1846 to 1906. It sounds right around the same time that Elizabeth was born, and I guess that's one bit of contradictory piece of evidence. But I would like to see if I can't find. I believe her name was Prudence. Prudence Presley was Elizabeth's mother. This is interesting. I think, yeah, this is her. Prudence Tilley, 1816 to 1832. I'm really glad that even to this day, which I find it really cool, this old cemetery, I guess it's the families of the families are still taking care of this grave. And you can tell that a lot of these are older graves. Like usually when they, if they were just putting down like rocks, I mean, that's usually a sign that this was before the time of actual headstones. You see, that's interesting. Gilbert Falls. He was in the War of 1812. Now, aside from like the haunt season stuff, that's fascinating. He fought in the War of 1812. And I really hate how people just have to do this kind of stuff. Polly C. Long, born 1818, died in 1888. And now, I remember hearing from a friend of mine, and I forgot how the legend went, but I think it does pertain to Polly Long, which, again, I just hate how people have to go and push things over. It's really dumb. And you know what? While we are on the topic, I just want to show you all why it's best not to do dumb stuff like this. Well, for example, at the bottom of the church, they have surveillance. Up here as well, on top of this old tree, which is hundreds of years old, they also have video surveillance. So I like that the area has done this to keep morons from damaging history, for people to, to pay their respects and just enjoy, some of the stuff, that is just legend, which I never really understood. Now, this cemetery was featured in on My Ghost Story, and I found this out from my friend Exploring with Moon Man, that there is a story associated with one of these headstones, and it is it's the grave of a child. Now, I forget how that story went, but maybe I'll insert the clip. I believe it was this one, because I know he was only a couple of years old. I believe that one was it. But anyway, aside from the ghost stories, this beautiful little cemetery, it's very fascinating. And I'm glad that the neighborhood, I guess you could say, is really keeping dumb people from just destroying these headstones. Which kind of leads me to near the end of this video. Initially, I wanted to go to Red Ash Cemetery up in northeast Tennessee, but allegedly it's said that it's the most haunted cemetery in the entire state. But if you look at the actual history behind it, that is not a haunted cemetery. It's all mostly urban legend, which can't really be pinned down. And if you go out to that cemetery, you will see that people have absolutely destroyed those headstones. And really, I'll put a link to a group that is really trying to prevent that. But anyway, this one has also been on my list for a while to see the Appalachian witch, I guess is, well, anyway, she was more of a medicine woman, I guess you could say. But anyway, it's really cool to come out here and just pay my respects and kind of look at an interesting story that's ingrained into the Appalachian mountain ethos. I guess that would be the word. But anyway, guys, remember, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Always means a lot. Goes to show that y'all care. Now y'all want to see more awesome videos. So without further ado, you guys, this haunt season vlog is over.